Welcome to The Low, and today we got in studio with me, you have Alex Cheney of the Game Daily podcast. What do you got on The Low for us today, Alex?
Well, we got a class war brewing in the stock market, Redditors versus hedge funds, and it seems to be all the rage, so we should probably talk about that.
Yes. I think that the Reddit page is now considered one of the biggest hedge fund companies in the world because of their numbers, too. I saw them kind of bragging about that. But
I think they have like 4.6, or I think it's about 5 million participants now in the WallStreetBets.
That's honestly,
it's insane. Yeah,
that's the internet for you, though. That really is. That's the internet. But I think it's important for us to kind of go over the definitions of what the short sale is and how they're leveraging and how what they're doing was illegal because of the 2008 crash. So you want to kind of go over that a little bit?
Sure. So, fundamentally, I won't go too into detail on this. We could get way into the weeds. But basically, what happened was GameStop was seen as a failing company for obvious reasons. Games are mostly being downloaded these days and all that. So brick and mortar in general is kind of going out the window. So these hedge funds, which are basically, money managers for rich people, they saw that GameStop was, going down, and they were like, I want to bet that it's going to fail. And so that's when you engage in short selling, which is essentially somebody owns a share of the company, and a short seller comes along and says, if you give me your share, I will agree to give it back at a later time. And then they give the person who's lending out the share, some compensation for that. This is all kind of done abstractly these days. The brokerages are the ones lending out the shares and everything, and the person who owns the share doesn't really even know about it. But the idea is you're borrowing a share from someone. And then after you borrow that share as the short seller, you immediately sell it. And then you still have to buy it back at a later point to give it back to the person you borrowed it from. So you're hoping that the price will be lower when you have to buy it back later. And if the price of the stock goes down, then you make money. If the price goes up, you get screwed because now you have to pay more than you sold it for.
Mm-hmm.
So they were betting that the stock was going to go down, and it is a bit of a self-fulfilling prophecy if you do enough of that, because what you're essentially doing is, before the short seller came along, somebody owned stock in that company. They were communicating to the market that there is demand for this stock. And so when there's higher demand, the price goes up.
Uh-huh.
But the short seller came along and took that share that was going to be held, and they sold it, which tells the market there's less demand for this stock. So it drives the price down.
Yeah.
Simple supply and demand. Mm-hmm. And so short selling in general just tends to lower the price of the stock. And these hedge funds, there were multiple hedge funds, lots of money changing hands. They shorted the stock like fucking crazy.
Mm-hmm.
In fact, they did it to an illegal degree, sort of illegal. It's supposed to be illegal. They were actually shorting more shares than existed.
Right.
140% of the existing shares, which obviously makes no sense. If short selling is supposed to be borrowing shares, you can't borrow what doesn't exist. So that was supposed to become illegal back in the 2008 financial crisis. But there are loopholes, ways to get around that, which we won't get into.
Yeah.
But it's bad. It's bad. And it's the reason that these Redditors on WallStreetBets were able to skyrocket the price of this stock, because they saw what was happening. They saw this stock is being shorted to an insane degree, and they knew they're going to have to buy those shares back at some point. They are like legally contracted to buy them back and give them back to who they, borrowed them from. And so it started, I believe, with a guy who put like $50,000 in it, and then he started telling other people what he was doing, and it grew and grew and grew, and eventually like hundreds of thousands of people were investing in GameStop, for various reasons. You know, either they knew that they were kind of manipulating the stock, or they just believe in GameStop and wanted to save it, or whatever. There was, you know, it's that many people. There's not going to be any single reason for them doing it. But that's why, because, you know, people kept buying into it. It drove the price up, and eventually the short sellers had to start, you know, calling it quits and cutting their losses, because they're like, I gotta pay this back pretty soon, and it's just going up and up, so I better buy what I owe now, and that drives the price up more. So you've got Redditors and the short sellers now both buying the stock. And the short sellers have no choice. They have to pay whatever price it is, because they have to give it back.
Yes.
So that's how you saw the astronomical skyrocket in the price.
1,100% increase.
Yeah.
The last I saw, 1,100%. That's, so I think you could have bought it a while back for like less than $20.
It was at $3 at one point.
$3.
And now it's at $3.50, or it was at $3.50, and then they, you know, they stopped the trading and it dropped, and now it's gone back up some. So
yeah, well, and that's the thing though, because now that they've been called on their crap, then they've lobbied Robinhood and other vendors to not, well, specifically Robinhood, but now they want to allow people like us to buy it to get in on that action. They're making it where we can't even buy more stock to keep driving the price up to win.
Yeah, it's unclear exactly. We don't know for sure how the decision was made for Robinhood and other brokerages as well to put a ban on buying GameStop and the other stocks that this is happening with.
Yeah.
But I mean, it's pretty likely that the brokerages were, you know, pushing for this and influenced it, and were ultimately behind this change in policy, which lasted one day. Robinhood, others have allowed limited buying of the stocks again. I'm not sure exactly what the limitations are, but that's why we saw those stocks drop like 50 to 60% one day, because the brokerages literally would not let people buy them anymore, but they did allow selling.
Yes.
Which is what makes it so ridiculous. Because like sometimes the stock market will just say like, we're not allowing trading on this stock right now because of the volatility of it. And, you know, that's fine. That's just putting a pause on it. But this is totally different, because you're only putting a pause on one side, on the buying, and you're still allowing the selling. So you're just literally saying, this stock's going down, I'm going to force it down.
You're manipulating.
That is what they did.
You know, and that's when we get into the whole, this is a capitalist system, an open market, and Robinhood's whole thing was, let's democratize it. Why would you have to pay a fee for someone to, you know, sell your stuff without even, or loaning out like you were talking about? On Robinhood, they can't. Like, that's your, you don't have a broker who's, I guess you'd say, manipulating it or loaning it out to make more money. And again, I don't know jack squat about most of those things, but you know, this is a capitalist system, and to me, this is like a communist rule being applied in a capitalist system to benefit only certain people.
Yeah, it's clearly biased toward the hedge funds in this instance, and in most instances. Because those hedge funds were getting destroyed while the price of the stock was going up, and so it was very much in their interest for the price to go back down, which is what the brokerages forced to happen. And that's why they are now under investigation by the SEC.
Yeah.
And there are a lot of progressive Congress people calling for action on this.
Even the Wall Street people are asking for some intervention from the government, which is unheard of. You know, they're really hurt when they ask for regulation. And they're also crying on CSNBC and Fox News. And
yeah, so there's quite the information war going on at this point. The rich people who have lost money and getting called out on their shit here, they are trying to paint the WallStreetBets community as like Nazis and sexists and all this stuff, because, you know, when you've got a community that large, obviously there's going to be, you know, people in there saying really off-color stuff. And they're just kind of cherry picking that out and trying to paint the whole community as that. And
Right.
basically just, which doesn't even have anything to do with the legality of what's going on here. They're just trying to turn public opinion against the retail investors, which is what it's called when common people are investing, or retail investors. They just want to turn public opinion against those people so that they can get rules put in place that will price those people out of the market, is what's likely on the way here.
Yeah, that's their goal.
So we saw that, we've seen that before with like day trading, where there are rules in place now that you have to have a certain amount of capital saved up. You have to have a certain amount of wealth in the bank in order to day trade. And if you don't have that amount, you can't day trade, or you're very limited on day trading. And that is the kind of stuff that we might see coming down the pipe, which with like limiting options trading, which is a way for people to invest with a lower amount of money. Just generally, you know, pricing people out of the market and limiting one of the few avenues for poor people to have class mobility.
Well, and that's why I've actually dipped into cryptocurrency myself and said, you know what? I'd rather go the crypto way. At least I can take my money out whenever the hell I feel like it and get in whenever I feel like it. Don't have to have all these sanctions and all kinds of regulations, and all that stuff is controlled and owned by us, the people, for now.
Yeah. I mean, the good thing about cryptocurrency and decentralized finance in general is that, you know, this kind of bias can't happen, because it's not controlled by any single entity,
right?
With the blockchain and all that. The problem, I mean, so that's a good investment way. It's a very volatile investment avenue. You know, the problem with cryptocurrency is that it calls itself a currency, and it really isn't at this point, because it's so volatile. You have to have stability in a currency. And so it doesn't actually fill that role. But as a speculative market, like a stock market, it does work for that.
Yeah, I just do $100 here, $100 there, and I ride the wave. And I see it going up, I try and get in. If I see it dropping off, I sell at the bottom. That's all you can do. And that's no different than what they're doing on Wall Street, except they're doing it with billions of dollars. And I believe that one hedge fund lost like $17 billion or 70. I don't know what the number was. I know 7 was involved, but I think it was like $17 billion cash infusion to pay for all this crap they did that's illegal. And they're hurting. It's one of the biggest ones too. One of the biggest hedge funds.
Melvin,
yes, that's it. Yeah, man. So I think that's poetic justice. Just like what's that guy's name that was on Yang?
Make a big bad bet and you lose. I mean, that's what happens.
Looks like Chamath Palihapitiya is his name, I believe. He said that we should let them lose. Stop bailing out the high risk, or the so-called savvy investors, and bail out the people. And this is where they're doing the exact opposite. Once again, they're bailing out the big ones and letting the rest of us suffer that took a gamble. Because if you're buying that stock, you could get $0 out of this. And you know, if you spent $50,000 in stock, you could lose it all. And they're okay with that one individual losing $50,000, not the hedge funder. You know, so.
Yeah, the thing is about with normal investing in a stock, when you just buy a stock and hold it, and then at some point later you sell it, the most you can lose is whatever you put in. But with short selling, because you are obligated to buy a share at some later point, you know, there's no limit to how high that stock can go up before you have to buy it. So it's really just a question of like, if it's going up and up and up, it's just a question of when do you cut your losses. Right. But your potential for loss is pretty much infinite.
Significant. It's also kind of like what do you call that? Commodities have that kind of windfall where the price of a commodity can go up and down. You can lose all that money quickly. I have a friend that does that stuff. He's insane. But hey,
it gets to like you know, the stock market was really created with the intention of being a way for people to invest in companies that, you know, they believe in, and kind of help those companies along. And this is all a result of the stock market over time becoming more and more of just a casino, where people are not betting on like what company is going to do well. in this case, they were betting on a company was going to fail, but then they were also manipulating that company into failing, because the more they shorted it, the less confidence there was in GameStop as a company, which means it's harder for them to get loans. They get worse interest rates on their loans, and so it just makes it more likely for them to fail.
Yeah, the snowball.
And then you also have most of the trading these days is done like high frequency trading. It's not even done by people anymore. Most of it's done by algorithms. And they're just trading like multiple times a second, trying to like, buy a little lower than they sold for. And so it's completely disconnected from the original intent, which is investing. So getting back to the class mobility issue, what is ultimately vital to class mobility in a capitalist society is achieving passive income, which is what you're getting from investing in the stock market. You buy into a stock and you can just leave it there. It's basically just you have money, you invest that money, and it makes more money for you. That's passive income. It's not coming directly from any work you're doing. And that is a fundamental tenet of capitalism, is that you can have passive income from investment. And so what we're seeing is that is being more and more cut off for poor people to have passive income, which cuts them off from moving up the ladder, So we should probably talk a little bit about like what really is capitalism, because it's a word that gets thrown around all the time and nobody ever really defines it. To most people, it just means like whatever our system now is, and they associate like all the bad things in our system with capitalism, even if some of them are kind of, we don't actually, I'm gonna posit that we don't really have an entirely capitalist system. So what I mean by that is, if you look at the spectrum, you've got on one end is communism, which there's various forms of communism, but in general, it's a top-down approach where the government basically controls everything. They control what gets produced. They control what the pricing for it is, who gets it, what the distribution of the production and the wealth in society is. So it's a very top-down approach, and that's why it pretty much always leads to authoritarian governments, because you're concentrating all of the power at the top. And then on the other end of the spectrum, you have capitalism, which is a bottom-up approach where the production and everything is controlled in a sort of decentralized intelligence by all of the people. So what gets produced and at what amount and at what price and where it goes and all of that is decided by people collectively voting with their money. And what makes that possible is competition between businesses. So they compete for customers, and that drives efficiency and innovation and keeps the prices low and all that good stuff. So that's what makes capitalism beneficial. And it also means that the government is minimally involved. So you don't see the sort of trend toward authoritarianism. The danger with capitalism is more kleptocracy, where businesses sort of co-opt the government and start creating biases for themselves to have an unfair advantage. Which we definitely have a lot of that going on at this point. But the idea. So what I will say is that without passive income, you can't call yourself a capitalist. That is pretty much the defining feature of whether you're a capitalist or not, is whether you have wealth invested that's just generating more wealth for you. And the problem that we have, the reason that I would say we don't have a capitalist society, in addition to the kleptocratic problem, is that fundamentally the problem is that we're not all capitalists. A lot of people don't have the disposable income to be a capitalist. They don't have the disposable income to invest and have passive income. And as a result of that, we have a lot of people that are stuck in the lower class, and they can't advance. They can't move on up to the middle class or whatever, and they're just treading financial water. Still others can't even get enough to survive. They can't get enough to get the basic needs that they need. And so this is known as poverty. And it is not only bad morally, but it's toxic to free market capitalism. And here's why. As a result of poverty, many people don't have the money to vote on what should be produced.
Right.
And that is a distortion on the efficiency and the effective production that is a staple of capitalism. As another result of poverty, people don't have the capital and security to start new businesses, to take risks and make efficient financial choices. This reduces the competition and innovation that capitalism relies on to function properly. As another result of poverty, people are restricted in their finances and exploitable by, like, say, payday lenders.
Oh, yeah.
And bank fees. They just can't, they can't make efficient decisions with their money because they're limited in their opportunities. And so that further traps them in poverty. As another result of poverty, the free market ideal of people deciding fair wages and work conditions can't be achieved because people are forced into jobs out of desperation for survival income. And that makes them exploitable there as well. So work that people don't want to do, which should come with a high wage, instead pays poorly. Same for essential work, which should be highly valued, but it's not, because you can force people into those jobs. This is known as wage slavery, and it is also toxic to free market capitalism. As a result of wage slavery, a great deal of government bureaucracy and intrusion into the market happens in an attempt to mitigate that exploitation. So think like minimum wage and unions and other things that Republicans often complain about. That's a result of poverty, because that's the government trying to step in and mitigate poverty, but not eliminate it. And so that creates, that hurts small business when you have minimum wage. And it's just like, it's a Band-Aid that can be a further distortion.
When you have someone working 40 hours a week at minimum wage too, we also are socializing their income. We're what do you want to say? We're compensating the companies for paying them shit. Okay, yeah, you can pay them $7.50 an hour federally. That's the lowest you can go. Sorry, Mississippi. And then they qualify for welfare, all the social safety systems that we compensate the market for, and that's an unfair advantage to the free market where the capitalists keep more of their capital, and it doesn't trickle the hell down.
Yeah, the entire welfare system is another collection of market distortions that result from poverty. We would not need those things if we didn't have poverty.
Well, if you think about it, then if you look at us statistically, this country is made up of more socialists, if you will, in a social system like welfare than there are capitalists. So there's less than 50% participate in the stock market, I believe.
I think it's just barely over 50%, but the amount of wealth that they have as a percentage of the stock market is minuscule.
Yes. So we have 50% that are able to have this, that are true capitalists that can participate in it, and the rest of us don't.
Yeah.
So it's hard to be called a capitalist system when 90% of the wealth exists in 50% of it.
Right. Yeah.
Skewed.
So it's like we have a system of half capitalists and half just people stuck in poverty
and hoarders of wealth.
And another result of wage slavery is that the prices on things get distorted because you're artificially suppressing the cost of human labor. And so one thing that really bugs me is that suppresses automation as well. Work that could be done by machines doesn't get done by machines because humans are cheaper than paying for the machines. So it's actually like retarding our progress. And I mean, it's just go ahead.
But with this pandemic, that rule just flipped. Like McDonald's,
well, the pandemic is pushing it toward automation, yeah. But I mean, it's still.
But if you own McDonald's, like say McDonald's or Burger Ing or whatever, you could literally automate away every single person in that back end, except for someone then it becomes like a production line. You have a person that offloads and onloads, so like supply and demand. Like you load all the chutes, hit the go button, and as the orders come in, bang, 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 you take it off, you wrap that shit up, and give it to them out the window. There should be 2 employees at the entire store, technically, a loader and an offloader.
Yeah, and that's what would happen. That's what would have happened a long time ago in a true free market capitalist economy, because, and that's what you would want to happen. I mean, we don't want, nobody loves working at McDonald's. Nobody loves doing that kind of work because it's just repetitive, mechanical work.
Soul crushing.
Yeah, it's exactly the sort of work we would want machines to be doing.
Well,
so that we can spend our time on more important things.
We're human beings,
right,
capable of so many great achievements in our mind with art, music, entrepreneurialism, and to have someone at slave wages flipping a burger that literally can be done by an automated little thingy that flips with a timer on it. I think that type of work is beneath us as a species. Let's be honest. That's right. That's how I see it. And we should be running towards universal basic income with a VAT, because we're taking that value that's created, taxing it, and giving it back down to create that cycle, that cyclical money flow, top to bottom, up and down, up and down.
Yeah, let's not get into the funding, because there's a whole array of ways that you can fund UBI. So that would be a whole other conversation. But yeah, that is the point of UBI, is that, you know, all of these things that we listed come from poverty. It comes from, and poverty comes from there not being a minimum amount of income that you can make. You know, if you can go to $0, you can be making nothing. And that is what causes all of these problems, is that there is the risk that you can fall to zero income. And UBI just solves that directly. It's like, hey, we're going to have, instead of a federal minimum wage, we're going to have a federal minimum income.
Right.
You can never go below this amount. Ideally, it would be enough to meet your basic needs anywhere in the country, or at least in most places in the country. So, you know, if you're in a really high cost of living area, maybe you could move to a lower cost area living and still make it on your UBI.
Right.
But that's the idea. It solves all of this. It creates an actual free market capitalist economy.
I like that approach you took too, is replace the minimum wage with a minimal income. Yeah.
Because as we said, the minimum wage, it's just a Band-Aid on the problem of poverty. It doesn't solve it. And it creates market distortions, like harming small businesses, which is harming the competition, which makes capitalism work. Yeah. So you get rid of poverty, you get rid of the need for those distortions.
And the more top-heavy anything is, the more likely it is to collapse. And this is only going this direction so far. And we're at that point where it cannot go on. It just can't. Like, people are starving to death. Homelessness is on the rise. A pandemic just advanced this thing, like Andrew said, 10 years and 10 weeks. Now it's been 10 months. You know, so what the hell? And we're starting to open up, like Michigan tomorrow, February 1st. They're going to let us do indoor dining again, and bars and restaurants. So,
as opposed to the completely enclosed outdoor dining that was going on before?
in Michigan in the winter, yeah, opposed to that. Yeah, which means nobody's doing it. There's a couple of restaurants and bars, or like a brewery, I guess you'd say, that have these igloo things they built. They pump in warm air in an igloo, like an inflatable igloo, and you can go out there and have a drink and a bite. But that's about it. That's an income. That's an investment that doesn't really get you what you need to run the company. So you're really just bleeding to death.
Yeah, one thing that bugs me is that a lot of people, you know, seem to equate UBI with socialism or communism, or they think that it's, you know, just a left idea. And that's not true at all. It's completely in line with capitalism, and actually would make our economy more capitalist than it is now in a big way. And I think that's why, you know, whether Yang was going for this or not, when he went with the freedom dividend, is a perfect name, because what America's always been about is freedom. We have free markets for business, for religion, for policy. You know, that's capitalism, that's freedom of religion, that's democracy. And this brings us closer to the ideal of a free market economy.
Yeah.
It puts the people in charge.
Well, it's definitely something for everybody to chew on and think about, because I think we really got to keep working on this. And it's 4 years is a long time. 4 years is a very long time. I don't know how the hell we're going to do it without a universal basic income. When you have this housing moratorium coming, I don't know if they're going to do it without that. Because you're going to take the money you should have spent in UBI, you're going to spend it on paying off people's loans and
Right.
their rent. So where's that money go? It skips you, the consumer, and goes straight to the one above you. It just skips you a whole level.
It's a lot like being in poverty and you can't make efficient financial decisions and you get bled out by like fees and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
That's essentially what we're doing by not having UBI. We're paying more to maintain poverty than it would cost to eliminate it.
Ugh.
And it's making our society worse in all sorts of other ways.
That's a great statement. That's for damn sure. Yeah. But I'd love to hear what you guys think about this in the comments section. If you guys have any ideas on this, please throw it in there. And while you're here, give this video a like if you like this kind of content. If you don't, give it a thumbs down. Let us know why. We're not scared. And while you're here, go and hit that subscribe button and notification bell for upcoming videos. And join us next time on The Low. Where can people find more from you, Alex?
You can basically just Google Yang Daily Podcast, and that'll bring up the website, or I'm on every podcast directory out there, as well as YouTube.
And it's every single day, not every day. Monday through Friday minimum.
Almost every day, yeah.
Almost every day.
And also on Twitter at Yang Daily Cast.
Yes, and that's below us. All right, guys, see you guys next time. And like always, gang gang.